So I've been asked to answer the question, what resources did it take for us to implement our Z degree? Does everybody know what our Z degree is? No. So Tidewater has launched a pilot. We're in our second year of offering our Associate of Business Administration degree entirely with open educational resources, which means, among other things, there is no cost for textbooks to our students. And I'll touch more on that as I get into this. So the question of what resources did it take for us to get to where we are? You know, I've separated them sort of simply in my mind into two categories. The first is the obvious resources, and then the not so obvious. In the category of the obvious, it takes money, right, to develop the courses, develop the content, some of the consulting that we've engaged in, to create OER, the analytics that are involved in the model that we have implemented. That's first. Second, and probably most important, are people. The people resources, starting with the leadership, faculty, support services, and obviously you've got to have students who are willing to take courses where they don't have to purchase a textbook. Big toe, right? And then last is the educational resources themselves. So the obvious I would put in those three categories. It's the not so obvious where I think we need to spend our time, and hopefully what we have learned may translate to some help on your end should you pursue or decide to pursue a path that Tidewater has. So going back through the not so obvious, starting with the money. You know, I'm sure if I was sitting out there hearing this, I'd be thinking, yeah, if I had money, buckets of money, I could do the same thing. However, we did not have buckets of money. What we did was reallocate funds that we already have. You know, we weren't given a couple $100,000 and encouraged to go create this. We were left to our own devices to find the resources to set it up ourselves. And in looking at money that already exists, you know, that requires a reprioritizing of how those funds are spent, you know, making some decisions on the level of priority, sometimes in some cases what doesn't get funded, and a shift in where we're headed as a college. So it takes some thought, some creativity, in order to get to the funding that has helped us get to where we are with our Z degree. Moving on to the next is the people, and again, the most critical part of what we have done. What we've accomplished with the Z degree really begins, I think, with a commitment from leadership. And what has been key here is, I heard the word once already, we did not mandate. There is no mandate at Tidewater for faculty to offer courses in the way we are. In fact, it's just the opposite. You know, we have a team of faculty who have taken hold of this and have claimed it as theirs. That is, I think, perhaps the most critical reason why I see other colleges have not done what we have done in establishing an entire degree. When you look around the country, you see pockets of areas that are doing this. I do not understand to this day why more colleges are not offering entire programs using OER. We have proven it can be done. And there's some more proving ground there for us, and I'll touch on that as we get into this. It can be done. We need to move past the pockets and find our people resources to expand it far beyond, you know, those pockets of areas. So people, it starts with the leadership. Now with the leadership, there are essentially two key things I think that the leaders bring to the table to help make this happen. First and foremost is they create the conditions, what I call create the conditions. They provide that support, they find the resources, and then we get out of the way. We let faculty do their thing. You know, we get pulled into that conversation when we're needed, we let go and let them run the course as they need to. One example, when we first launched, and Lumen Learning was brought in to help us figure out the path we were going to take moving forward, we looked very close at Canvas as the tool to help us put all of our content together and offer our Z courses. Our faculty said in looking at Canvas, it was too soon to learn a new LMS at the same time we were learning about OER. And so because of that, we pulled back on looking at a new LMS and focused on what we were using with Blackboard. You know, that's the kind of thing I think you allow your faculty to guide you in making sure that you stay on course and work with what's going to work for them. There are other examples, but that's one I would say from a leadership perspective that he helped create those conditions. Second thing is, and just as important, is policy. You know, it sounds so obvious when you talk about OER that, yeah, of course you should have a policy, right? Well, I'll tell you that when it comes to institution-level policy, you are hard-pressed to find anything out there. There's very little. There's lots of other policy, national level, regional, but there's very little that we've been able to find at the institution level. What we have done is we've created our own policy. Actually, we just went through our second iteration. It's out there for anyone to see and look at and use, adapted to fit, you know, for your purposes. But what that policy does is a couple of very critical things for us. One, it grounds what we are doing in purpose. You know, what we are doing with our Z degree has a very tight purpose. Essentially two things. To open up access for our students and to refine the teaching process for our faculty based on analytics, something that is not being done anywhere else that we know of. Two key purposes. It also ties it to our mission. What we are doing very tightly connects to student success and what we're about at Tidewater. And then as you work through the policy, should you take a look at it, it covers, you know, all the critical things you would expect to see in a policy. It sets standards for how OER is used at Tidewater. It talks about the quality and the selection of OER, content itself and how that's done. It talks about support mechanisms outside of the classroom to help faculty and students. It shares expectations. One expectation for us as a faculty member can go through 2 cycles of continuous improvement before they take that course and make it available in the Creative Commons. You know, that's what works for us. We can run it a couple of times, work out the bugs, get comfortable with it, and then it must be put out. Those kinds of things you find in our policy. And that's part of what I mean when I say creating the conditions for what we're doing to be done and be done well. Second resource, the faculty. And not just any faculty. In fact, I see several of our Z degree faculty in the room. Would you stand, please? These are not just any faculty. These are innovators who've been willing to step out on a limb, set their textbook aside, and take the risk of teaching a course that they designed using OER. That takes some guts. It takes some willingness to address what you hear from colleagues, stepping out on that limb, you know, making sure that you've got the resources to support you should you go out on that limb. We're very fortunate at Tidewater to have, at least initially, our first core of 13 faculty who've grabbed this and made it their own. We're in the second year of a pilot. We just added another 12, 13 faculty to join the 13 that started, so that group will double in size. We begin to expand what we're doing beyond what we've done the first pilot year. In terms of faculty, you also need, I would say, a champion, but I would qualify that by saying we don't just have any champion, we have a secret weapon in Linda Williams. Linda, would you please stand? Really? You'll hear from Linda a little bit later, and you'll understand, I think, listening to her, why what we have done has been so successful and why you all need a Linda to accomplish what we've done, leading a team of faculty. You also need a Diane Ryan. Diane is the reason why this meeting is here today, has helped organize it, set it up, lead it, and set the course for where we're headed, hopefully on a broader scale beyond Tidewater. So I'd like to thank Diane as well. Diane, you behind the curtain still? Wizard of Oz. Then, of course, you need support staff. You know, our academic advisors, our counselors, others around the college, the academic deans needed to know and be aware of what we're doing with the Z degree right down to the course section level. Doesn't work unless you have everybody plugged in. And so you round out what happens in the classroom with those services outside the classroom. And then the last piece, and also critical, is having a partner, a consultant who's more than just the kind of partner that's going to tell you what you need to do to be successful, that's going to listen, take it in, and help guide and create those conditions. And that's what we've had in Lumen Learning with Kim Thanos and David Wiley. Kim, would you please stand as well? If you haven't met Kim, you want to before you leave today. Lumen has been a fantastic partner for us. What they brought to the table early on and continue to help us with is the expertise in the OER itself, the curation. They've helped us with the course design. And now perhaps the most critical thing they're helping us with is the analytics on the back end, where we can give faculty feedback based on data to help guide how their course will look or can look moving forward. That's what it took to get us where we are with the Z degree. The question we're wrestling with now is what resources are going to take to sustain what we've created. There are 4 things I would put in that category for now. First is training. We have, thanks to Linda Williams, a training program for any new faculty member who we bring on board. It's a 6 to 8 module program that when they finish will give them a pretty good idea, start to finish, for us what a Z degree in an OER course looks like, how to design it, how to license it, the basic questions that they would need to get started. So we have the training program in place. What we're doing with that program is we're pushing it out to our librarians. What we have done, and you've heard some of this from Anita, we have redefined the role of our librarian at Tidewater and to begin to incorporate in an intentional way an OER role. And in doing that, one of the things that we're going to try to do is we're going to try to have at the campus level here at least one librarian who's in place to train that course that's been created and to begin to take that role beyond the training and figure out the curation pieces. Which leads me to the next piece, and probably the widest gap we have right now in terms of resources. We do not have or cannot say with confidence that we have the technology we need to really do this well and sustain it. And there are 2 pieces to that. First is the repository itself. And we don't have an easy way to capture this content, to catalog it, and then put it back out for faculty to review, collect, and figure out how to use. That's a key piece. We've got to figure that piece out, and that's broader than just Tidewater. We've got to figure out how to get that content organized in a way that any faculty member who wants to pursue creation and teaching of an OER course with us can go to that site, sort through that content, find it, and begin to use it. Second piece is the analytics. In the back end of what we're doing, all of our content has to be in our LMS. It doesn't matter how the course is taught. And our courses are taught face-to-face, online, hybrid, but all that content needs to be in the LMS. In order for us to generate the data on the back end, to be able to produce a report with some analysis in it to give to the faculty member at the end of the course, that they can then use to make adjustments to that course, we've got to have the tools to simplify what that looks like and to turn those reports around in a timely fashion. Hand that off to the faculty member so they can use it before they teach it the next time. Or better yet, be able to give them analysis as the semester goes on and be able to adjust those courses. That too is a key critical component when you trace it back for us to our second goal and what we're trying to accomplish. To help our faculty be even more effective teaching with OER in the way that you cannot be teaching with a textbook. And the last piece is, we're going to come out of our pilot at the end of this academic year. And when we come out of it, we're going to have some analysis that we'll share that will show, when you begin to line up other programs against what we've done in the business degree, what other degree programs and certificate programs we're going to be ready to add going beyond just the 1 degree. The open question there is going to be, do we have enough OER content in the gaps where we're seeing them to offer those other programs? And I suspect where we're going to see some gaps is in our career program areas. When we start talking about high-speed manufacturing and what we do in welding and some of the other areas. Maritime for us is a huge market. You know, we may have to create content in some of those areas in order to get to a point where we can continue to expand and offer entire programs solely with OER. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's the resources that got us to where we are and moving forward. But I tell you, in all of that, it's more about the resources that we're saving and less about the resources that we've invested to get to where we are. Let me just share with you some numbers. We're in our 4th semester offering our Z degree in pilot mode. We have had to date 1,061 students finish. We've got another 630 in the current semester. We're building the schedule for the spring semester, and we'll add about 1,000 seats. By the time we're done in pilot mode, we will have had 2,500 plus students have gone through our Z degree program. Not the entire program, but courses. The ability is there to move through the entire program. Those students will have saved conservative, these are conservative numbers, the 2,500 at the end, will have saved in textbook cost a little over $255,000. In pilot mode, 2,500 students, $250,000. That's a drop in the bucket, though, when you look at how much students spend on textbooks. We looked at summer 2013, fall 2013, and spring 2014, numbers from our bookstore. How much was spent on textbooks? 3 semesters, 1 college, $11,974,552. 1 college, 3 semesters, just under $12 million in resources. 64% of that were students on some form of financial aid. Student loans, Pell money. You think about what we invested financially to get to where we are and what the potential savings are to students and taxpayers. There is no comparison. No comparison. You know, you'll hear some about an economic model. It's hard for me to think about an economic model and not look at the cost that a college like this spends every year on textbooks, with the monies that students spend. So it's more, I think, about the savings on the back end of this and the impact we can have. We're talking 1 college and what we've done. There's no reason, again, no reason in my mind why every college shouldn't have at least 1 program and growing the way we are, offering to their students the ability to complete an entire program without having to purchase a textbook.
So I have a question for you, Jennifer. We have a project at Mary Washington. We have a faculty member who has his students do a very similar thing. They actually take a Western civilization textbook and write supplements for it. And he's been doing this over a number of years. He's now actually started going back and having students improve what previous students have done. So are you having your students sort of look at previous work, or are they building completely from scratch every time?
I think everybody heard, right? Are we okay not to repeat? Okay, so a teacher at Mary Washington teaching Western Civ is having his students supplement the regular textbook and then go back and improve it over time. And so the question to me was, do I also have my students go back and improve what they created? I've used a couple of different models for this. One of the models that was really successful, and I'm not doing it for a couple of different reasons, but I had I used to have 5 different students, up to 5 different students write on the same topic. So let's say the topic was charter schools. So about 5 students could write on that same topic of charter schools, and then we would pick, based on those ratings, which one had the highest rating. And then that one would become the official lesson or the official article on charter schools. And then that one would carry over to the next semester and sort of compete against the other ones. Now, I don't have students go in and edit other people's content, and one of the reasons why is because I found that even in this climate of openness and Wikipedia, that students still have a very strong sense of ownership over their individual work. And when they go in and they, excuse me, they edit somebody else's work, they don't have that same investment, they don't have that same maybe care, and then the authors often get upset with having their work edited by others, so we haven't quite moved everybody into the Wikipedia culture. So I found that it was more successful in my class to have students write their own individual lessons and then, you know, potentially use that competition model that I mentioned before. Or in my case, what was happening is there were so many articles and so much to rate, and then students got upset with that idea that, like, you're turning me into a rating machine. So I had to figure out a way to sort of narrow down the actual numbers of lessons that needed to be vetted each semester, which is why I'm not still using that same model before. But I think, you know, depending on the number of students you have and exactly what you do in your class, you could do something like that, because it was fairly successful, and then they had those models to go on from prior semesters.
Yeah, I have a question. Oh. Okay. Go for it, Andrew.
This is for Anita. Not being within the library milieu, so to speak, but I got the impression that I guess there's two philosophies there that mirror faculty, in that you've got the people in the library system that the most important thing to do is to buy the best resources, which come nicely packaged and everything you need, because the publisher spent all this time doing whatever they needed to do. And then there's the OER approach, which, because it's not so turnkey, has this whole barrier to entry and more complexity to it. But at the end of the day, if there were a system in place that made that more turnkey, we might get more buy-in to it. So I guess the question is, how do you get to that point with the OER resources?
Good luck.
Okay, so so the first
I'm hardly repeatable.
So the first task is to repeat what you said. Your question pertains to two different streams of production of teaching and learning materials. So the traditionally commercially published materials versus those that are published in sort of in a more open fashion.
More curated.
Okay, and how to move that direction?
The more traditional stuff is easy. That's where we run into the problem in all aspects. You know, if the textbook is the center of the universe, then you just get the textbook.
Right.
However, as opposed to creating the resources and restructuring the courses. But at the library level, to me, it seems like the same thing. But the library would be a great model for moving everybody to say, okay, if we build this our own, we can save our students money, make them more part of the process, and in the library, make even people in the library more involved in the process rather than just acquiring assets.
Great. So you're just to reiterate, or try to.
Sorry.
That's okay. What you're saying is. I don't know what you were saying. Let me say this. We have a lot of authors of textbooks and other kinds of materials that are employed by the university. If there were a cultural shift so that those people could participate in publishing openly, and if they were interested in publishing openly, they have a number of incentives to not be interested in publishing openly, although most of them don't benefit tremendously financially from book publishing commercially. That is a place where libraries are looking to go, into more open monograph publishing and those kinds of things. Does that sort of
Jim,
address
did you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you, Diane. One of my questions is about textbooks, period. Is that the way, it's kind of like an assumption right now that, textbooks are the way to go digitally through OER, and why are we reproducing the textbook in a digital space when maybe that's not the best form for it? So that's for the whole panel.
Yeah.
Discuss.
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, I totally agree. If there are better learning materials that are more interactive, more effective, let's use those, let's develop those. Just because the textbook is a known entity, I think faculty know that what a textbook is, what it can do, how it works. It's not a mystery. Some of the other learning materials are more of a mystery. How do you implement these things? They're less familiar. I think that's why we gravitated toward reproducing something that's known instead of inventing something totally new that can be even better.
I think part of the answer to your question is in the design of the course itself. We took our courses and stripped them down to the outcomes in the course and then found the resource matched to the outcome. We're not looking for a turnkey electronic textbook. It's a customized match between the best resource and the outcome. That's going to require more work, and hence the need for a repository to organize this content in a different way than we do in the library now.
Okay, we have a question up front here.
Oh, can I address that real quick?
Sure.
Okay, one thing, now students use YouTube as their favorite search engine, right? So to me, that's pretty telling that they'd rather have the content come to them as a video rather than text. So I think your question is really an interesting one, especially if that's students' preferred learning model. But I will say it's a heck of a lot more work for an instructor to compile all of those individual different resources and videos and what they might be. And if you have the option of, oh, look, here's a textbook, I mean, that's hours of your time that you're not spending now. So I agree, yes, it would be wonderful if we could, use the TED Talks and all the different resources that we have available to us. It's just, can we teach fewer classes and get more money? My provost is here somewhere.
Good. Question up front.
This will let you go on the stream, so you guys don't have to repeat the question.
Thank you.
I was just going to, I wanted to ask Daniel about analytics. Is there are you collecting data to show that students are learning just as well, if not better? I mean, it's clear that it's a way to save money. So that's the question I want to ask. But if I could just say one quick thing, the outcome should, and it actually empowers instructors to use open ed, because you're deciding as the subject matter expert, back to being the authority and whatever, what the outcome should be for the students and what we want them to learn, and we're going to let that drive the resources that we use instead of the textbook companies deciding. It is harder, but it does give us more power. But I do want to know about the analytics, Daniel. Thank you.
So we track the normal things we do with our courses: retention, success, withdrawal, all of those indicators, and Linda may touch on some of this. They are equal to or better than, which was our benchmark, than what we do in the traditional classes. We are seeing no slippage whatsoever. In fact, early on, the data showed that we were retaining more students in the Z courses than we were in comparative courses. On the analytics piece, at the end of a course, the instructor gets a report, and it basically shows three things: what's working in the course, what is not working in the course, and then gives them some suggestions on either the design or other resources to use to improve the course. And it's all based on data that's being pulled right out of the LMS.
Does technology continue to be a big barrier, though, for some students to access the resources, or no?
I'm not hearing that, no. I mean, the content's accessible from any device. I think that most devices anyway that students are using.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question?
I'm curious about the economic model, particularly as it pertains to impact on the intellectual model, which is that, right? We all know the meme of the big evil textbook company and so on and so forth. But faculty produce that content. In the higher ed environment, faculty produce that content. For many of them at most institutions, production of that content is actually a requirement of them maintaining the work, right? So in the model here, where we're saying, well, now we're open, we've removed this, right? Aren't we really creating a model where we've hired an outside company, in this case Lumen, they come in, they now play the role of the textbook company, right, at a different construction of the cost. The faculty's intellectual work is subsumed to them, limiting the marketplace of ideas, right? The faculty marketplace of ideas is now restricted to the employer, and so while we think of it as we're reducing costs, saving costs, are we necessarily really doing that? And aren't we simply moving the cost, right? We're squeezing the cost savings out of the faculty, which is where it's always been for 30, 40 years running on, when the real burgeoning of costs in education is the administration, right? And we're hiring outside organizations to come in and then run this. And I know that's a very skeptical question to ask you about it, but I think it has to be asked because, you know, there is an impact there. We're changing a model for people who aren't just teachers, but they're content producers. What they do, right, very fundamentally is produce content, and they change our society with their academic endeavor.
Thank you.
Daniel?
I'm looking at you.
I don't see it that way at all.
Well, I know you don't.
Well, it's not just that I don't, but the content is, I mean, Lumen doesn't produce content. We're not buying content from them. Content resides in the open domain. We're pulling it down and using it in a smarter way. I can't get my mind around the way you pose that. There's no...
And how are they financially together? These OER experts are faculty that have content expertise just like you and the rest of us in spring. Many folks are saying, we're going to create content and make it available for free, not expecting content to be work. So the content that is out there
I have a question for you, Anita, but about this question, I don't think we can look at the publisher model as something that really benefits faculty. And it certainly doesn't benefit students when you have a textbook, whether it's produced by a faculty, that they can't afford. And so student success here at the community colleges is being dramatic, and I'm with the community colleges, by the way, being dramatically impacted by the cost of textbooks. So, and the other thing I'm hearing too from all these panelists is this is not mandatory, and that's an important point, that faculty who are participating in this, the faculty in this room, are all doing this because they see that connection between their work and student success. And one other thing is that they're open ed resources, so you're kind of building on other people's work, right? So you may have some brilliant ideas in your biology text that you can share, and then someone else can take that and build even a better biology book. So it kind of accumulates that way, the way I see it. But I think all these models are fine. If a faculty member writes some brilliant textbook and wants to publish it and make, whatever they deserve for that, I think that does not end that model. But I think what we see is publishers have taken advantage of the situation for years and years and years, and have, if you look at the cost of textbooks, it's just unsustainable. Something has to be done. And Jim's point, it's not really about content that much anymore. I mean, the content is out there. It's what you do with it. It's writing your own textbooks. It's interacting with it that I think we have to start moving towards. And there's my question. And I'm Richard Sebastian. I'm a Director of Teaching and Learning Technologies for the BCCS. And I'm wondering, Anita, do you work with the Library of Virginia, the Virtual Library of Virginia, with the Viva group, as far as with your OER efforts? Have you contacted them?
I am familiar with it. I have reached out to the Virginia Scholarly Communication Network to find people, but I have found only a couple. So in the four-year colleges anyway.
Yeah, it's something you might want to do because we have some board members there who are really interested in OER, and
Okay.
Viva, as you know, is a way to really, it's a gem here in Virginia that really helps us keep costs down for a lot of resources.
Thank you.